What's up, guys? Welcome back. Welcome to another developer interview. Today we're joined by Mommy's Best Games founder Nathan Fouts as we talk about his new release in Explosionade DX on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, and Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S as well. Before we dive in the interview, be sure to buy the game. It's a really cool shoot 'em up. Run and gun platformer, rather, not really shmup.
Yeah.
Nathan, thanks for joining again. Last time
Thank
we
you.
talked about your previous release, Shoot 'Em Up DX. Love that one too. And this time around, talking about Explosionade DX. And the first thing I do want to say is, last time we spoke about releases, how to phase them out in terms of regional differences, in terms of policies for different consoles. This time it's a simultaneous worldwide release.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
How did you
Yeah,
manage
it
to
was
do that?
hard. We learned a lot with Shoot 'Em Up DX, and it was interesting. Can't tell if it's better or worse in terms of sales yet. Time will tell. But basically, I think it's been better in terms of fan response, in terms of not disappointing people.
Right.
Although, from a weird psychological developer side, maybe it's good to disappoint people because they anticipate it more. You know what I mean? Like, it's really weird. Like, when you say a game and then you go coming to Switch in April, what's the first post right after that? It's
Like,
PS4?
when will it drop on PlayStation? or
Yes,
Xbox?
when's it coming to Xbox One?
Right.
So that was kind of, not in a negative way, but that was kind of a mindset for the Shoot 'Em Up DX release was, can we stagger the releases and get people excited that way? And then I thought, well, let's just go full, crazy on the Xbox One or Explosionade release here with everything. And I think it's been good that way. It's a little tricky because you can get everybody talking about it at once or staggered.
Before we dive in more, I just want to remind you guys of the giveaway, so be sure to scroll down to the comment section down below for all the details. Now, Explosionade DX. Originally, 10 years ago, the game came out as Explosionade, if I'm not mistaken. I've never played it though, but from my understanding, game consists of 40 levels, 35 of which you basically chucked out, and you created 55 new ones to include a grand total of 60. I can't help but think, isn't it then like an entire new game rather than a deluxe version of the old game?
It's a good question. It's kind of like if you have a puzzle game and none of the mechanics change, but you redo the puzzle levels. Is it the same game? Is it a sequel? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of up in the air. Like this, I'm calling it the same game, but like, we kept the story the same, but because we have more levels, we got to introduce more jokes.
Right.
And the jokes show up every 3 or 4 levels, and they're very silly, and they're, geek culture references and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, it's light, and it's just supposed to be silly. So the story kind of floats above all the levels, drops in every so often. But then the levels themselves, they have the same enemies, they have the same mechanics, but then we added some new enemies. I mean, and then we just redid a bunch of levels, and so, yeah, I don't know, like 1.5? You could call it version 1.5, it's something like that. That's the DX. Yeah, it was just, it was a game I've always wanted to revisit, and to me is the ultimate version, and it's got a ton of level redesign in it. And it has even a few more new enemies and situations. So I've just always wanted to make it basically slightly harder. I didn't want to make it, I don't know, Contra 3, you know what I mean, or Super Meat Boy or anything like that.
Right.
But I wanted to make it harder so that it was just had a little bit more spice to it, a little bit more teeth to it. And so...
And in doing so, like I've been reading your devlog, interesting stuff there. Guys, if you haven't, be sure to check that out. Something I came across there is that in reworking your game, You basically did that in an exercise together with your 10-year-old son, which must have been like the ultimate father-son experience and perhaps one of the most original game development cycles. Like, how did that come about? Like, what's up
It
there?
was awesome. I mean, I loved it every minute of it that it was working out. You know what I mean? Like it was going as well as it seemed. Basically, we talk about it at dinner sometimes. We'll bring up like what am I working on and that sort of thing, or like sort of like what's my wife's work, and that she does writing and stuff like that. And so we'll all talk about things. And so then I would say, oh, I'm getting ready to work on the mech game Explosionade, and they kind of know about it. And then what really went well was finally getting the level editor to work again. And so to me, getting the DX version ready for people in the port, the dream scenario was to be able to re-edit the levels. And I say level editor, it's a standalone program. And
Like,
I didn't know if
what's
it was,
the name of the program?
I think we called it EXLL1. I don't know. Like it was just an internal program. Handwritten. It was just handwritten for our game, like by another programmer that I hired at the time, and still a friend of mine. And so he wrote that, and it's not consumer ready. Like it's very touchy, and you just got it, but it's effective. I just didn't know if it was actually going to work, and I managed to get. Well, it had all the old all the characters still working, and I had to kind of tell my code to reinterpret these little things into new characters, and it worked. And then I was basically able to craft new levels. And once I finally got that working, that's when I started talking to my son about it and letting him play with it, and he got excited about it too. And once he got excited about it, he started making the hardest levels possible.
Cool.
And they were brutally hard, like we could barely finish them. But I mean, it was really fun to talk about level design and like balance and what's enjoyable about a level. And so he would make, these really tough levels, or we would talk about an idea for a style of a level, and then he would, kind of work on that. And so he made about 5 or 10 of those, maybe 10 or 15, and then we kind of worked it down from there on those. And so I ended up using his really hard levels as the peaks.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because I like to have a spike in the difficulty and then a lull for a couple levels. These are really short, like 1 to 2 minute levels. So for anybody that hadn't played it yet, and there's 60 of them. So I like, some kind of variety, and then a big spike in difficulty, and then some variety, and it kind of gives you a little a hit, like a wall, where you gotta rethink the level.
You have this proprietary level design software. Yet at the game start splash screen, you have a made by Unity logo. So does that like integrate in Unity, or so on a software level? How did you develop this game?
So it's crazy. It's Unity. I worked with the guys that did Shoot 1 Up DX, and Super Soul is the name of the studio.
Right.
And they've developed basically a mini suite that fits inside of Unity. And what's interesting is it sort of just creates the whole game through code in Unity, like almost on one chunk. So we don't go into Unity, for anybody that's used it, we don't go into Unity and like hand place items in Unity like you normally would. It's instead created through code. It's crazy. So I write the code or use the level editor to build the code in C#. And then Unity just sort of like looks at our whole engine, our whole Explosionade engine, and builds it out of that. What that does is it gets us the sound, input controls, rendering, and it works those into each system. So it is important, because we kind of like, it's like a choke point, sort of like a meeting point where, it comes out of our game, goes into Unity, and then Unity translates, inputs and that sort of thing to each console. So we definitely use it. It is helpful that way. It's just very different than a normal way that you build games in Unity.
It's not used in like terms of intuitive level design, graphics, and it's basically a translation module in this case.
Yeah, it's pretty abstract. there's like Unity has that 3D editor, the WYSIWYG, like what you see is what you get.
Right.
We don't get that. We
Right.
don't get to use that for these remasters because they were written for the Xbox 360 and C#, and so they're really just kind of old style code base. They're built off of XNA, that old system, and so the guys at Supercell, they were able to get a version of XNA working abstractly that way through Unity.
Okay,
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Speaking of interesting, the story in this game, quite something. Like last time we spoke about story, you mentioned that you never, you're not really looking for a story that takes itself too serious, that demands too much attention. You just want to get to the action, but not without a backstory entirely, right? So I think this actually fits the bill. I was just wondering, like where did this story come from? You have this no good soldier basically stealing a mech, going down to the sewers and blasting apart aliens and all that. It has a lot of tongue-in-cheek dialogues every now and then, like you said, every 3-4 levels or something, which is actually cool. Like, why? Where did this come from?
I always like context, even if it's, a friend of mine, AJ Johnson, he wrote the story for that. And so he writes science fiction on the side, and he just has fun with it. And so, I mean, I helped set it up and that sort of thing, but he was mainly responsible for all the terrible clam burrito jokes and Star Wars references and Ghostbusters and stuff like that. Yeah, like, I think we came up with the idea of like the structure of these two numbskulls, and he did like most of the work there. The only thing that I came up or helped with at the end was the idea that, well, we just kind of like I always like branching paths as well. So there's actually a good ending and a bad ending to the game. So if you play the story, you can get a bad ending, and basically, you didn't save the day. Like, even though you made it all the way through all the levels, you didn't save the day. And there's a way to do better, basically. And I'll just give it away. It has to do with the valves. There's these red valves in the game.
Right.
And if you
have to shoot them, you rotate the valves, close
if you turn them all, if you don't turn them all, you get the bad ending. If you turn them all, it keeps track of your progress too, so you can quit, and you don't have to do it all in one run or anything. In the story campaign, if you turn them all, you get the good ending. And what we liked about it was the idea that the big, strong, tough Marines are fighting the front, and you're sneaking in from the back, and you actually save the day because you go into the worst possible way into the sewers. I can't remember what that's from, but like I feel like entering into the castle through the sewers is pretty classic historically. Right. You know what I mean? Like the worst way to get in, like the way that's not guarded. And that was the kind of the inspiration for that.
Another thing which I like about your games is that you add a twist. You don't just rip off a concept, you take a concept, but try to add something new to it. Shoot 1-Up DX was obviously that instead of saving up your 1-ups, you play all your ship at once. Which, just once more, I have to say this, great game, check it out. Because of this very mechanic. For this game though, you added that bouncing bubble shield, if I named that correctly, which
sure, yeah,
which shakes up the gameplay quite much. Like I'm happy just walking with my Mac and shooting stuff with twin stick setup. That was a great feat, by the way. With the bubble, especially if you play it at 150% game speed, which I prefer. And you drop down and you get bounced around, and then all of a sudden you overheat and you're vulnerable sitting duck there. Like, how did you get to this mechanic? Like, it's not an obvious choice for a run and gun platformer.
I mean, I think it came from sort of Western style mech games, which I do like. I think are awesome. Like, what was the Mech Warrior release on the Xbox original? Do you remember that? That had an enormous, control system. It shipped with a controller. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
It was just massive. And so the Western style mech is lumbering. It's enormous. There's a couple series, game series with giant mechs that are really cool, and they're just full of like armaments, and they're really big and slow. The Japanese one is usually like jet powered and really fast and sleek. So that you got a Japanese style mech, you got a American style mech, and I just thought kind of almost like a blend between the two, where it looks pretty lumbering and slow. The Explosionade DX mechs, we call it Grenados as a play on GLaDOS. Grenados of the mech, but then the bubble mechanic speeds up the whole game. So I just like it, for a platformer. Well, I played off of Cybernator, these other Super NES games, Cybernator, Metal Warriors. Then on the Genesis side, you've got Assault Suit, Lanos, and that was Target Earth in America. Actually, Assault Suit Valkyns, I think, is Cybernator in Japanese. But anyway, they were kind of slower games, but a lot of them had a little nice. You could have like a boost, and like you could ski along the ground, and it was pretty cool. So I just thought, let's go crazy. Let's go further than that. You know what I mean? So you got this. What it is you have a shield, and it is a shield. It stops any damage whatsoever. You're completely invincible, but you can overheat it. And then the other cool thing about it is it preserves your velocity perfectly. So normally you're taken down by gravity. So it's pretty tricky to get the hang of, because what can happen is you think it's causing the speed, but it's not. It's actually just not. It's just taking away gravity and lets you bounce around the level. So what'll happen is if you jump into midair and almost start to fall, and then turn on the shield, you basically just hover in midair, and you're just stuck. And you're like, what am I doing? You know?
Right.
But if you activate it on the way down really hard and fast towards the ground, you bounce and just rocket around the level. And right. It's definitely a skill. There's a lot of depth to it. You can definitely get good at it and really start moving around the level. So, yeah, it was mainly a reaction to the big mechs, you know.
Maybe you've given it away already, just now when you were talking about a weapon of choice, potentially receiving a DX, but what's next?
So we are working on a secret project.
Cool. Secrets are good.
Yeah, it's good. I don't want to say anything about it yet, because we're trying to figure out the reveal of it. And also, when I did my an earlier game, Pig Eat Ball, which is a big action puzzle game, a very long game. That one's development, I felt like I revealed too early before I nailed down the art, and so I'm trying to make sure the art looks perfect on the brand new game before we talk about it. But in between there and this next game, we're gonna do Weapon of Choice DX, and it'll be kind of more like a Contra run and gun game. So. Yeah.
Similar to Explosionade, but without the bubble bouncing.
No, it's more like if you look at Contra Hardcore on the Genesis, it's more like that. It's a shorter game with lots of branching paths. So if you look at Contra 3 on the Super NES, it's a great game, pretty long, you know, and there's that top-down mode and it's linear. But if you look at Contra Hardcore on the Genesis, there's story breaks and branches you can actually take, and you change the story. So Weapon of Choice is going to be more like that. Cool. It's a short game, but lots of branches, several branches.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool, awesome.
Looking forward to it. So you might want to join me again once the game drops, and
yeah, that'd be awesome.
We get to talk about it. So with that, Nathan, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
For talking about the game. Once more, I think it's a great game. You guys should be picking up Explosionade DX for, well, platform of your choice, basically. And I'm looking forward to seeing more, man. Looking forward to it. Oh, but by the way, what's happening on the additional music for Shoot 1 Up? Is that coming anytime soon?
I can't give a estimate on it on the time, because you can't rush perfection. Let's say.
I agree.
My musician has given me 2 new tracks, and I think they're both excellent, but he's promising me several more, and so I was just like, you know what? Let's just, we're going to release a patch all at once. When we finally when he's happy I just thought I don't want to rush anybody, and I've talked to him. I'm trying to rush him, but also he's not going, any faster. So it's just like when he's ready, we'll be able to do it. And I just figured let's do it all at once. It'll be good. So they're coming. I've heard 2 new tracks and they're great. So
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks so much, Nathan, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.